Welcome to this deep dive, tailored just for you, the learner. Today we're tackling a really substantial piece of work, the Verizon 2025 Data Breach Investigations Report, the DBIR.
Yeah, the DBIR. It's kind of a cornerstone report every year.
It really is. You've flagged this one for us, and, well, our mission today is to pull out the crucial insights, maybe those surprising data points, and ultimately help you feel, properly informed about what's happening in cybersecurity right now without just drowning you in data.
Exactly. This isn't just a quick skim. We're really digging into their analysis of over, 22,000 security incidents?
Yeah, it's massive.
And with a sharp focus on the breaches themselves, 12,195 confirmed data breaches. That's the highest number they've ever put in the report.
Highest ever. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and this data, it comes from Verizon's own Threat Research Advisory Center, VTRAC, but also global contributors' publicly disclosed stuff.
So they're pretty wide net.
A very wide net. Represents victims from 139 countries, so a global picture.
Okay, so let's start to unpack what this, mountain of data actually tells us. We want to explore the current cybercrime landscape.
Yeah.
The threats that could impact you, your organization, and maybe some proactive steps to think about.
Right. Well, look at the actors who's doing it, their actions, how they're doing it.
What assets they're after.
And the impact. All using that VERIS framework they build the report on.
Right, VERIS. We'll touch on that.
And actually, before we dive too deep, maybe a good moment to thank our sponsor.
Oh, good call. Yes, a quick thank you to our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.services.
Great. Okay, so the big picture stuff.
Let's do it. What jumped out?
Well, one of the huge shifts, really striking, is the third-party involvement in breaches. It's doubled.
Doubled in 1 year.
In the past year, yeah. It now accounts for 30% of all the breaches they analyzed.
30%. That feels significant.
It is. And it's not just that there are more. It's what it says about how interconnected everything is, how much we rely on external vendors, services.
The supply chain, essentially.
Exactly. And maybe, sometimes a lack of clear security responsibilities and contracts or not enough auditing.
Right. And the report mentioned some big disruptions tied to this, didn't it? Like Change Healthcare.
Yeah, Change Healthcare, CDK Global. These were major business interruption events, BIRs, stemming from third-party issues. We're not just talking data leaks. These caused massive operational shutdowns.
Really highlights those cascading effects. 1 week link.
And you can bet cyber insurance providers are watching this very closely. That downtime is costly.
Okay, so third-party risk is way up. What else?
Well, how attackers are initially getting in, exploiting vulnerabilities. Yeah. That continues to climb. It's hit 20% of breaches now.
20%, so that's catching up to credential abuse.
Okay.
Like stolen passwords.
Pretty much neck and neck, yeah. Credential abuse has been king for a while, but vulnerability exploitation is right there.
And any specific type of vulnerability?
Yes, this is key. Exploits targeting edge devices, think VPNs, firewalls, that sort of thing, saw an almost 8-fold increase compared to last year.
8-fold? Whoa, okay, that's huge. Why the focus there?
Well, think about the massive shift to remote work, scaling up remote access.
Yeah.
Those edge devices became sort of the front door for many organizations.
Makes sense. Prime targets.
Prime targets. But here's the worrying part. The report found only about 54% of these specific vulnerabilities were fully fixed, fully remediated within the year.
Only about half.
Yeah. And the median time it took to fix them, 32 days.
32 days. Well, attackers are actively hammering on them.
Exactly. It raises that big question. Are organizations patching fast enough? Especially on these critical edge systems.
Yeah, that's concerning.
Okay.
And inevitably, ransomware. Still a big part of the picture.
Oh, absolutely. Still a major player. It showed up in 44% of all breaches analyzed.
44%. Wasn't it around 32% last year?
It was, yeah. So a significant jump in prevalence.
I think I saw something interesting about the payments.
You probably did. There's this curious twist. While the percentage of breaches involving ransomware went up, the median amount of ransom paid actually went down.
Really? Why would that be? More attacks, but less money paid on average.
The report suggests a few possibilities. One is simply that more victims might be refusing to pay. There's a chart, figure 47, that points to a noticeable rise in non-payment.
So maybe better backups? Or just deciding it's not worth it?
Could be both. Better preparedness, better backups, maybe a realization that paying is no guarantee, or perhaps just, a pushback against the whole ransomware economy.
Interesting dynamic. Okay, let's shift gears a bit to how they categorize these attacks. the incident classification pattern.
Right. VERIS patterns.
System intrusion is still a top one, right? Malware, hacking.
Definitely. That's where ransomware often fits, along with other hacking techniques. And they specifically call out Magcard again.
Magcard. The e-commerce nightmare.
Pretty much. Injecting code into checkout pages to steal payment card data. Still happening.
And you mentioned credentials before. That pops up again, doesn't it?
It really does. Under basic web application attacks, which are mostly about using stolen credentials, the report highlights something quite striking.
Yeah.
46% of systems compromised by info-stealer malware. You know, the kind that grabs saved passwords from browsers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 46% of those systems that had corporate login data stolen were actually non-managed devices.
Meaning personal laptops, phones.
Exactly. Bring your own device, BYOD. It shines a real spotlight on the risks there and how hard it is to secure personal gear that touches company resources.
That's a huge challenge for IT and security teams, that blurring line.
No kidding.
And what about the human element, social engineering, phishing and all that?
Still very much a thing, even though the report noted a slight dip in overall human involvement down to 60%.
Still a majority, though.
Oh, absolutely. 60% is still huge. And tactics like phishing emails, trying to trick people, they remain incredibly common.
Are attackers getting trickier? Any new techniques mentioned?
Yeah, they touched on things like prompt bombing, basically trying to overwhelm someone with MFA push notifications until they accidentally approve one.
MFA fatigue.
Right, and things like SIM swapping are still a persistent risk for account takeovers. The report makes a good point about MFA, actually.
Which is?
That while it's super important, critical even, determined attackers are finding ways around it. Token theft is apparently quite popular now.
Stealing the temporary code itself.
Yeah, like from session cookies or other means. Figure 52 details some of that. Attackers adapt, always.
Always adapting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's zoom in a bit. Does it look different across various industries?
It definitely does. The report breaks things down. For instance, finance and insurance. No big surprise, it's still dominated by financially motivated attackers.
Makes sense. Follow the money.
Right. But healthcare had an interesting shift. A big jump in espionage as the motive.
Espionage. In healthcare. From what to what?
From just 1% last year up to 16% this year.
16%. Wow. What could that mean? Nation states looking for research. IP.
That's the suggestion. Maybe a shift towards intelligence gathering could be national security-related intellectual property rather than just grabbing patient records for fraud or financial gain. Though they also caution that changes in who contributes data can sometimes influence these trends year to year.
Fair point. Any other industry standouts?
Manufacturing gets a mention, particularly the high percentage of small and medium-sized businesses, SMBs, getting hit.
Ah, yes, the SMB focus. They did a deeper dive there, right?
They did. And it revealed a really stark difference with ransomware. Get this. Ransomware accounts for 88% of breaches in SMBs.
88%. Compared to what in larger organizations?
It's actually just 39% in larger orgs.
Wow. That is disproportionate. It doesn't even cover it.
It really underscores how heavily ransomware impacts smaller businesses. They often just don't have the same resources, the dedicated security teams, the advanced tools.
Making them easier targets, maybe? Or just more likely to be devastated by an attack?
Probably a bit of both. The consequences can be absolutely brutal for an SMB.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
What about the public sector, government and such?
Also saw a shift. In the past, unintentional errors like misconfiguring a server, accidentally exposing data were often a leading cause for them.
Human error, basically.
Right. But this year, there was a rise in breaches caused by those basic web application attacks.
Ah, the stolen credentials again.
Seems so. Exploiting web apps, likely using compromised credentials. And unfortunately, ransomware is still a big threat there too, across all levels of government.
So governments are battling credential stuffing and ransomware, just like many others.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Securing those public-facing applications and managing credentials effectively remains a huge challenge.
Okay, this is all built on, you mentioned it earlier, the VERIS framework.
Yeah, VERIS. Vocabulary for event recording and incident sharing. It's fundamental to how they do this report.
And for you, the learner, why is that important to know?
Well, it provides a standard way, like a common language, for describing and analyzing security incidents. That standardization is what allows Verizon and others to aggregate data from lots of sources and spot these large-scale trends we've been talking about.
So it enables this kind of big picture analysis.
Exactly. It allows for consistent data collection, sharing, comparison. It's crucial for understanding the threat landscape beyond just your own organization. And, speaking of understanding and support, another quick thank you to our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.services.
Right. Thank you again to www.cisomarketplace.services.
Okay, so pulling this all together then. The Learner, this deep dive into the Verizon 2025 DBIR, it really paints a picture, doesn't it? A persistent, evolving threat landscape.
Definitely evolving.
Key takeaways for you have to include that increasing risk from third parties. You really need to know who you're connected to.
Supply chain security. Huge.
Then there's the growing exploitation of those edge devices. Patching matters, especially there.
Critically important. And fast. Ransomware. Well, it's still dominant. It's adapting, even if the payment dynamics are shifting slightly.
It's not going away, just changing shape, perhaps.
And fundamentally, it's still about both the tech weaknesses and the human element. Social engineering awareness, strong authentication. Still foundational.
Absolutely. You need both. Tech controls and human vigilance. And the report clearly shows threats vary. Industry matters. Size matters. That SMB ransomware stat is sobering.
It really is.
We really hope this exploration has given you those valuable insights, maybe a few aha moments you were looking for.
Without it feeling like just a data dump.
Right. Because the full report, it's dense. It's a rich resource, for sure. So we definitely encourage you, dive deeper into the sections most relevant to you, your industry.
Yeah, think about how these findings map to your own situation. What proactive steps might make sense for you? And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. The report itself emphasizes this point. In cybersecurity, the work never ends.
It really doesn't.
So given that constant evolution of threats, the increasing connections, how can you move beyond just reacting, beyond just putting out the latest fire?
Towards building more resilience, something more anticipatory.
Exactly. Building security postures that try to anticipate and actually mitigate future risks, not just respond to past ones.
That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And definitely something worth mulling over as you continue your learning journey.